So welcome everybody to our Colorado Department of Agriculture Community Food Access Workshop. We're so glad that you're here. My name is Dana Wood. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I am with the Colorado Blueprint to End Hunger. I'm going to go ahead and read our land acknowledgement and then go into a few housekeeping things before we get our presentation underway. Today, we underscore, reflect on, and celebrate the histories, culture, experiences, and contributions of Indigenous communities, the first peoples and stewards of the land now known as the United States. Before it became Colorado, this land was home to many tribal nations, including, but not limited to, the Apache, Arapaho, Cheyenne, Lakota, Pueblo, Shoshone, and Ute. Others tribes whose territory sometimes extended into Colorado included the Comanche, Kiowa, and Navajo. Colorado was a site of trade, travel, gathering, and spiritual healing for these tribes, and is currently home to over 200,000 Native, Indigenous, and First Nations people, including two federally recognized tribes, the Southern Ute Tribe in Ignacio and the Ute Mountain Tribe in Toyac, as well as the Northern Ute Nation near White River, and all other tribes and Indigenous peoples who are not federally recognized. We offer our deepest gratitude and respect to the many Native leaders and groups who are active on the forefront of necessary social progress, helping to bring equity and justice in reach where it's needed most. Please join us in honoring the past, present, and future of Indigenous communities. So just a few housekeeping things. I will be monitoring the time and the chat box. We are going to utilize the chat box strictly for this if you have questions, so go ahead and type them in there. And if they are questions related to the presentation, we're going to save those until the question and answer portion of the presentation. If you're not speaking, please make sure that you're on mute. And then also go ahead and type your name, pronouns, your organization, or your community in the chat so we can make sure to track your attendance if you requested any compensation for attending this meeting. It's also helpful if you can rename yourself on your screen with your first and last name, as well as your organization or your community. And you can do that by right-clicking on your own up in the three dots on the corner of your picture. If you scroll down to rename, then you can type in your new name that will name your little photo bubble. Hunter is going to be helping with Zoom and assigning folks to breakout rooms, as well as helping to monitor the chat if anyone has any technical issues with Zoom. So Hunter is the person that will be helping us with that. And with that, I am going to hand it over to Mickey with Colorado Department of Agriculture to get us underway.
Thank you so much, Dana, and thanks to everyone who's here this evening. Really excited to introduce you to the Community Food Access Program and get your input here on how we can make this program great. So we'll start off with some introductions. I'm Mickey. I'm going to be the program manager for the Community Food Access Program. We also have Tom Lepetsky is really involved with this program. He is the Markets Division Director, and Hollis Glenn is the Deputy Commissioner of Operations, and he will be taking over the second half of this presentation. So this is the Colorado Department CDA team who's involved with this program. Okay, so here's what we have planned for this workshop. First, the CDA team will describe the components of the Community Food Access Program as outlined in House Bill 22-1380. And like Dana said, as we're going through this, please type any questions you have about the bill and the establishment of the new program in the chat. And we'll address those, or as many as we can, in 10 minutes after this presentation. But really, the reason why we're here today is to hear from all of you. So we're planning to spend 40 to 45 minutes after that presentation, hearing your feedback about this community food access program and learning from you. Okay, so House Bill 22-1380 became law in the spring of 2022, and it's called Critical Services for Low-Income Households. And it called for the establishment of this community food access program at CDA, among other things. And as it's written here, the purpose of this program is to improve access to and lower prices for healthy foods in low-income and underserved areas of the state by supporting small food retailers and small family farms. So there are three components of this program, and we're going to discuss each tonight. The first component is the consortium. The second is the grant program and the advisory committee. And the third component is our outreach strategy. We're also going to discuss the funding source for this program, which is the State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, also known as SLFRF, and what CDA, our contractors, and our grantees will need to do to stay in compliance. So we'll start with SLFRF, the funding source. This fund is a subset of the American Rescue Plan Act funds, which are for programs directly related to COVID-19 and recovery. For this program, $8 million was allocated to CDA. And because all activities related to this program are supported by these federal stimulus dollars, everything must tie back to the negative impacts of COVID-19. These funds come with some strict reporting requirements, which CDA will be held to. So for example, our department must use a competitive process to identify contractors to work with, and beneficiaries of the funds must report on indicators. Receipts must be submitted, things like that. Also, SLFRF funds must be encumbered by December 31st, 2024 and spent by December 31st, 2026. So we're under some pressure to get this program started up quickly. So we're going to be referencing small food retailers and small family farms quite a bit in this presentation. So before we dive into the program elements, let's outline here how the bill defines these terms, these eligible businesses. So as you can see here, small family farms refer to Colorado-owned and Colorado-operated farms that generate under $350,000 in revenue each year. So that's pretty straightforward. A little less straightforward is the definition for small food retailers. So there's a couple components here, and feel free to write your questions about eligibility in the chat. But the bill defines small food retailers as an independent or nonprofit managed, Colorado-owned and Colorado-operated small food retail business with less than 5,000 square feet of retail space. And it has to be located in or provide food to a local, state, or federally defined low-income, low-access population. In addition to that, the store must carry at least 3 categories of federally defined staple foods. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, the 4 categories of federally defined staple foods are meat or meat alternatives, bread and cereals, fruits and vegetables, or dairy alternatives. The bill also defines a small food retailer as a farmer's market or a farm direct operation that is already or demonstrates an intent to become SNAP and or WIC authorized where allowed. So feel free to type questions about those definitions in the chat, and we'll address those at the end. But now that we have defined the kinds of businesses that are intended to benefit from this program, let's dive into those three elements of the program that I talked about. We'll start with the consortium. The bill calls for the creation of a community food consortium, which will be an association of small food retailers and small family farms. The consortium intends to serve as an organizing body for these businesses and will have a budget of $1 million to address some known barriers that these businesses have to offering healthy food in retail environments. So these include providing technical assistance in purchasing and negotiations with distributors, subsidies for pallet break fees and distribution fees, connecting small food producers to small food retailers, providing value chain coordination, and much more. As you can see, this is there's a lot of potential here for what this consortium could be, and we're especially interested to hear your feedback on what the consortium can do for you in our breakout sessions after this. So I am now going to pass the torch over to Hollis Glenn, who's going to outline the other elements of the program. Hollis, are you on?
I am here, Mickey. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for Mickey for kicking us off, and Dana and Blueprint. Thank you so much for facilitating these workshops, and thank you everyone for joining us here on a Thursday evening. We know everyone's time is so precious, so we really thank you for taking the time to learn about this program. As Mickey mentioned, so we just covered the first kind of key program element, which is the consortium, and the second kind of big element of this program from the legislation is the grant program. And we call this the Small Food Business Recovery Resiliency Grant. And in this grant, there will be roughly $7 million to allocate to small food retailers, again, going to that definition, and small family farms in the form of one-time grants up to $25,000. These grants will be focused on supporting infrastructure for the retail sale of healthy food. A priority will be to keep that application process as simple as possible. This is really important and priority for us to implement. We also are going to have to also remain compliant with all of the federal funding that is ultimately kind of the source of this program's funds. So we're going to have to make sure that we're compliant with the federal requirements. Now, as you recall, this funding has to be COVID related. So applicants will have to demonstrate that they were being negatively impacted, their operations, by the COVID-19 at this point. And we hope to start accepting applications for this grant sometime in mid-June. Sorry. So the, oh, sorry for that. Sorry for the brief pause here. So the legislation spells out eligible uses for these grants, which include, but not limited to, refrigeration, freezers, display cases, storage, shelving, accounting, book management support, as well as like point of sale systems and costs associated with becoming a SNAP or WIC or authorized. Or this also would apply to other large operating costs that are related to expanding access to healthy food. Again, we invite you to add your questions now in the chat about this grant program. We'll cover a few of these at the end in a post Q&A, and then we'll also post them on our website on a Q&A form. stand up the grant program, CDA is going to utilize the assistance of a grant advisory committee. This voluntary advisory committee is going to assist the program staff at CDA with developing the application and the criteria, the evaluation of the grant applications, as well as help with the review process and assist in actually awarding the grants to the applicants. This committee will be made, this committee and the makeup is established in statute. So let's dive a little bit more into what the advisory committee is made up of. The committee will be made up of 7 members representing community and nonprofit groups, represented from retailers and farmers and individuals with experience using SNAP and WIC. We'll also have a CDA staff person on this committee as well, and we're actively soliciting applications for those interested in being on our advisory committee. So if you are interested in helping developing the Community Food Access Grant Program, please consider submitting an application by filling out the Google form that's on our website. And Mickey's going to drop a chat, a link to the web page where you'll find the application here in the chat. Going a little deeper into the advisory committee positions and what is that commitment entail, the advisory committee members that we select can expect to participate in 4 bi-weekly meetings from April to June to assist in the development of the grant process and the grant application material. Then we'll par down the committee meetings and we'll go down to monthly meetings to review applications starting in June. All meetings are going to be virtual and compensation will be made available upon request for appointed advisory committee members who are not otherwise compensated for their time by the organization. Again, click on the link in the chat to apply. We're looking forward to really assembling a great team of talented and committed individuals to help us stand up the Community Food Access Grant Program. So the last major component, again, we have the consortium and we have the grants, and then the last major component of the Community Food Access Program is an outreach strategy that is defined in the legislation. And we are aware that many food retailers and small farmers are not aware of this new program and the funding opportunities that will be available to them. So communication to them is critical. And to address this, we plan to leverage the existing expertise and relationships in communities based on the organizations within those communities that have those relationships with small business owners and the local farmers. This spring, we're going to be looking to contract with several nonprofit organizations to implement our strategy of outreach and promotion, and then also providing technical assistance to help those retailers and farmers apply for the grant. We'll have more information about the CDA solicitation for these contracts and this partnership in the coming next few weeks. A little bit more on the structure of this partnership. We've defined 6 regions in the state in which we will select the contractors to cover those specific regions. We believe, and you can see them here on this slide, we believe having local expertise in those regions is going to be critical to helping us establish those direct one-on-one relationships with the retailers and the farmers. And so CDA will be hosting a specific question and answer session related to submitting a proposal after the solicitation is announced. So please, if you don't mind, hold the questions regarding the solicitation specifics to another day when we have an opportunity to kind of host a dedicated Q&A on that. But we do encourage you to join our listserv, which will show here at the end of the slide, for you to become alerted when these opportunities open, as well as other information about the development of this program. So, as we mentioned, all these funds need to be encumbered by December 31st, 2024. So we are on a rapid timeline to establish a grant and consortium, to establish the grant and the consortium structure and enlist the help of outreach of technical assistant partners and start issuing grants and hosting consortium meetings this summer. So really quickly, the timeline, we're here in finishing March, where we've announced and we want to form our advisory committee to help us with the grant program. We'll be doing that in early April. We'll then beginning to, we are targeting then to have the contractors in place to provide that outreach and that technical assistance to have them in place by mid-May. On the consortium side, we'll be beginning to develop our first kind of consortium meeting in early June. And then on the grant side, once the advisory committee has assisted in helping us design the application process, we'll then formally announce that the grant opportunity for retailers and farmers will be open. And again, we're targeting mid-June on that front. So we know there are many wonderful organizations and hundreds of experts who have focused on food access issues in Colorado for years. And quite frankly, we are honored in being able to play a part in advancing this healthy food access initiative. In our breakout sessions, we're going to be asking you about what access to healthy food is like in your community. What resources could a consortium offer you? What challenges do you see small food retailers and farmers facing in supplying healthy food? And other questions. Your input will really help the CDA staff develop a really robust grant opportunity and be able to anticipate kind of the hurdles and obstacles that we're going to encounter standing up this program, and really identify those hurdles and then overcome them. And then that way we'll be able to develop a program that is as impactful as possible with the funding and the timing that we have to get this money out the door. So now I'd like to hand it off and back to Dana to ask some questions, to help facilitate asking some questions that you've been putting in the chat. We'll post again, we're not going to get to all these questions, so we'll post all the questions and our answers on our website in the Q&A session. Once we are done with the breakout sessions, you can go ahead, and little housekeeping here, you can go ahead and sign off. We won't be coming back as a group. So before we leave and dive into questions in the breakout sessions and handing it back to Dana and Hunter, on behalf of Mickey Davis and Director Tom Lipitsky and Commissioner Greenberg, I want to thank everyone here for taking the time to learn about the Community Food Access Program, as well as your willingness to help provide expertise in making it a success. So thank you very much. We appreciate the feedback. We want to hear as much feedback as possible. And with that, I will hand it back to Dana to guide us through the rest of the workshop.
Thanks, Hollis. So I have a list of questions that I got out of the chat. The first question is from Jenny Howell. How do we find out where our low income areas are located?
That's a really good question. That is not something that's clearly outlined. As I mentioned before, the legislation says that it can be a federal definition. So when I think federal definition, I think of census data, census block, census tract, state definition, or a local definition. So I think a lot will depend on how the grant is written, and how the advisory committee decides to structure that line of questioning. So all of that is up for the advisory committee to collectively decide.
The second question is from Mindy. I wanted to check to see if these funds could be used to pay staff for their time.
So operating expenses are listed. I want to remind everyone that this is a one-time grant with a maximum amount of $25,000. So based off of our analysis, it doesn't seem like payroll expenses are prohibited. Also bear in mind that there is a lot of reporting, and we've been clearly told from our SLFRF compliance officers that receipts have to be submitted. So what that might mean for payroll expenses is that payroll reports would have to be submitted. So these are questions we really want to dig further into. So thanks for asking that.
Nikki, if you don't mind, I can follow up. This would be a good question, a good point to kind of also, one of the key takeaways to know about this funding is it's because it's part of the federal COVID response package and recovery package, that to qualify for the grant, the applicant, so in personal services, you would have to tie that and make the case of why personal services now in 2023 were impacted, or is an impact of COVID-19, which which the brunt of that happened in the past, obviously. And so that's one area where I think the advisory committee, and it's such an important committee to define, because we will be defining guidance and structure of the application and the grant program to line out kind of what is allowed and what would not qualify. That one might be a little difficult if we can't tie it to COVID-19.
All right, next question. In order to demonstrate that COVID-19 had a negative effect, I assume that means the business has to be established by a certain date. Do you have a date of establishment? And this question's from Amy.
You are right. And I don't know this off the top of my head, but there is a time frame, and that's defined in the SLFRF requirements. So I will look that up and publish that with our Q&A. Unless, Hollis, you happen to remember.
I don't. Just maybe a little bit of background, and this might also be a good time to say, in planning for this, one of the other kind of messages here from CDA is, look, we know we don't have the answers. This is a brand new program that's being set up through a piece of legislation that's 7 pages, or 5 pages. So there are a lot of questions, and so we love this. We may not have the answer, which is fine, but we will figure this out again in partnership. So I love these questions because this is complicated when we really start to dig into some of this detail. And the other component is our job is having to implement this program using federal funds. I think it's fair to say that comes with a lot of compliance requirements and a lot of tape, a lot of obstacles for us to navigate as an agency. Our job, and Mickey's job, is to weed through that and suffer through that and ensure that does not then trickle down to the beneficiaries. This is very important, that we want to make the beneficiary application process clear, concise, and simple, while we're on the back end worrying about the compliance issues, such as the COVID-19.
And then Dan asks, are locally grown seeds eligible for SNAP? And I think someone had posted an answer to Dan's question in the chat that in fact they are, but I don't know, Mickey or Hollis, if you have an answer to that.
I believe they are, and I believe they're double up food buck eligible as well.
Awesome. Next question.
I guess I should clarify, seeds for food producing plants.
And then the next question is from Chris. Would participating in the grant advisory cause conflict of interest if you also intend to apply for grant funding?
Yeah, that is called out pretty explicitly in the legislation, actually. So if you plan to apply for the funding, you're ineligible from serving on the advisory committee. Another conflict of interest would be if you're a member of an organization that wants to apply to be a contractor, to do outreach and promotion. So yeah, we'll have clear, yeah, we'll have a conflict of interest form for you to fill out before committing to the advisory committee.
And then Kathleen and Jay have the same question. Are food pantries eligible? And I believe that is no, correct, Mickey?
So unless the food pantry has a retail arm, no, a food pantry in and of itself, while it is, I empathize here because the name community food access really does imply that food pantries would be involved, but this program is very, very, very focused on the retail food environment.
It does allow, Mickey, correct me if I'm wrong, it does allow, under the definition of small food retailer, it does allow for farmers markets. And I think the word was kind of farm direct operations.
Yeah.
So, and I think it does, the language does specifically say not eligible are food banks and food hubs.
Yeah.
But to drill down a little bit further, a point about the consortium is the consortium beneficiaries is really, again, small food retailers and farmers. But we imagine, and we don't see why food hubs, food banks, everybody, nonprofits can be engaged in the consortium in designing and helping, focusing on the goals of the consortium, such as value chain coordination, pallet breaks, and distribution fees. Those pallet breaks, distribution fees would have to go to a small food retailer. But there's no reason why, and our vision is that this consortium is hundreds of people, including food banks and food hubs, that are engaged in the work that the consortium would doing, even though they may not be a direct financial beneficiary.
Okay, the next question is from Mo. Will this program interface with Double Up Food Bucks?
It could. I think proposals that highlight integration or support with healthy food incentive programs like SNAP, like WIC, like Double Up Food Bucks. I think that's totally relevant and in line. It doesn't necessarily have to incorporate the Double Up Food Buck program.
Okay, I'm gonna go a little faster through these questions. Can this grant be used for delivering?
So, right, I think back to Hollis's answer, we don't have all the answers yet, but you know, I think this is going to be in the hands of the advisory committee to determine, you know, is this a priority project? Does this sound like a proposal that's related to COVID-19 that will improve access to healthy food in a low-income, low-access neighborhood? Back to that. As you can see, a lot of things are on the table for what is possible to fund. But that's why we really encourage everyone to be on the advisory committee or share the opportunity.
Okay.
The interesting thing, and again, why the community food, the committee is so, advisory committee is so important, is when you look at the statute, what's allowed, it does talk about refrigeration, cold storage, shelving, et cetera, but it includes the word of kind of like costly operational expenses, including but not limiting to. And so a cold storage truck, which I think is a vital and large operating expense, if it relate to the impact of getting that truck because COVID impacted the business and couldn't get the revenue to the truck to grow the business, that is where I think, you know, I think that could definitely qualify, so long as we work with our advisory committees as well as our legal resources to say, okay, these will be the criteria of which would make it. And I think the vision would be that we'd have those kind of examples there in which, you know, I think a truck with a cooling unit would qualify.
That's why we want as much feedback as possible from all of you in our breakout sessions later about what should be a priority for the grant.
Okay. I have another few questions around the impact of COVID-19. Is the impact of COVID-19 only defined by the shutdown, or what about how COVID-19 is still affecting us? And can the grant be used towards the purchase? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think the COVID-19, we kind of answered that we don't really know the answer to that, right?
We'll get a lot more clarity there, and we'll
Okay.
be sure to. Unless
Okay,
Hollis, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, we realize that that's a little squishy right now, and even, you know, kind of the other agencies that we're working on and incorporating all these federal programs that are related to COVID-19 are struggling with figuring out how do we tie this to there. I think that we'll provide guidance, we'll be seeking guidance, but really we are looking for it to be, look, we understand COVID-19 was in the past, right? And now here we are, how do we make that connection? And I think we will need to go and say, okay, look, COVID-19 severely impacted an operational plan or a growth of a business that has prevented them they're here and they wanted to be here, but that setback, you know, and document and kind of attest to what that setback is. I think, you know, it'll probably be done through a lot of attestation and narrative in the application process, in which that would be then the documentation in which we would then say, when they were to be audited by the feds, we say, we awarded this project to this program because this is how this applicant was impacted by COVID. And so we would have that documentation with us in the application, but I think it would just be pretty much a narrative explanation. I don't think we're not going to ask for receipts or any kind of financial documentation as a standard. Again, we're trying to keep this very simple in the process.
And then I have
go ahead.
Jay and Carrie are asking the same question. Can the grant be used towards the purchase of a food truck?
Again, there's nothing that I'm seeing that says no, flat out. I think, again, it would come down to what extent is that purchase of the food truck coming back to the mission, expanding access to or lowering prices for healthy food in low-income, low-access neighborhoods. So hopefully that suffices for now.
And then a few more questions regarding COVID. What if we started our business after COVID? A, because everyone was sick and couldn't do what I wanted to do, and B, because I started directly after because we were not allowed to have human contact.
We'll have to go back.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hollis.
These are the questions where we knew these are gonna be great questions and we just don't know how the answer to. So that's a great one that clearly I think what we can then do, come back, put on the website, get that clarity on how this impacts businesses that started post COVID. That's a great angle and a great question.
And then Mandy asked, is there a way to share this information with the Colorado Farmers Market Association? We have our annual meeting next weekend, and I think it would be very interesting to many of our participants to learn about this.
Yeah, we actually arranged for 2 sessions, one in April and then one after the farmers market season is over. So we'll be making presentations to the Farmers Market Association. And hopefully it'll be a little bit more relevant because the grant will be opening soon, right?
And then I have 2 more questions. Okay, that one was already answered in regard to expenses. And then Jay's asking, could retailer mean a cafe or coffee shop that serves 3 to 4 of the staples?
So, yeah, as long as it meets the other criteria. Yeah, and serves and supplies 3 out of those 4 staple foods. That does count as a small food retailer.
Great. Those are all the questions from the chat.
Okay,
Are we going to break out at 6:45?
we're ready if you are and if Hunter is.
Yeah, just want to check quickly that there aren't any other additional questions, or if anybody wants to come off of mute and ask 1 or 2 more before we head into breakout. All right, we're not hearing any. So Hunter, if you want to go ahead and open up breakout rooms.
Before we open up, I can just preface a little bit. We've divvied folks up into small groups of 8 to 15 people. And we'll be diving into some really specific questions, as we mentioned, to help us address some of these priorities, some of these challenges. So we have volunteers who so generously have donated time tonight to facilitate and note take. So they'll be going through a small presentation. And yeah, we can't thank them enough for helping us out with these workshops. So.
Wonderful. I will launch the breakout rooms. They are split up based on English or Spanish. If you feel like you were placed in the wrong room, please pop back to this main room and we will get you reassigned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone has been assigned, except for a couple people who are on iPhones. If you can hear me on iPhones, please let me know what your name is and I can assign you. And then Esther, I did not see your name on the registration, but I'm happy to assign you to a room. Just let me know what your preferred language is.
Español, por favor, y soy de Latinas Community
I
Connections.
prefer Spanish, please, and I'm with Latina Community Connections.
Perfect. I will get you over to breakout
En
room 2.
español, por favor.
And I prefer Spanish, please. This is Arisbeth.
Español, por favor.
Arisbeth, I'm asking for a group in Spanish, please.
Arisbeth, you should be assigned. There, you might need to click join or breakout room 2.
Ah, okay.
Oh, okay.
And then Felix, if you want to just, it looks like you're in room 3. If you just want to click join to that room.
And Kathleen, you are assigned to room 4. There should be a little blue rectangle on your screen, I believe. Kathleen.
Okay, those 2 went in. And
Okay,
Arisbeth.
Arisbeth's still here.
Arisbeth, do you see the blue join
Sí,
button?
no supe cómo.
No, I don't know how.
I wonder, Hunter, if you could. Oh, did she just leave?
Oh, I tried to switch her real quickly, but she just briefly joined room 1. Is there nothing for room 2, Elspeth?
Sí, regresé otra vez al 1. Sí, regresé otra vez al 1.
Yeah, I went back to group 1.
I could put you in group 1.
No, no me da la opción, solo me dice que me transfirió al
It's because it
grupo.
doesn't give me the option to select group 2. It just says that I was transferred to group 1. So yeah, so it goes to 1, not 2.
Huh.
That's fine. She can go to room 1 if that's the only one. Do
Did
you see it
that
now?
pop up?
Oh, yay.
Okay.
Okay.
Very weird. I don't know. Huh.
And then the two
Uh.
folks that are left in the main room, I'm not sure if you're still there, but you're both on iPhones. Can you just let us know what your names are and we can pop you in your rooms? Maybe they aren't there anymore.
Yeah, I might have just thrown it on in the background while they're cooking or something.
They're multitasking, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if they come back.
One of them, no, because I linked mine because I'm on my phone. I don't think that's mine. No.
Do you want to go in a room, Hollis? Hunter can put you in one.
Yeah, I didn't
a little
assign.
bit. I just
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can definitely assign you to a room.
no, throw me in a minute, but I wanted us to hang out here and thank you guys personally on this. This was great. I can't wait to hear what we're going to hear from the breakout rooms. But the execution was flawless here. Even the transition here is so great. So Hunter, thanks for putting this together. There's no way I would even know how to begin doing something like that.
No problem. It worked pretty smoothly. So I'm feeling good.
Yeah, we're very thankful that Hunter volunteered to be tech master for this.
I would tell Mickey when we were explaining kind of what we're going to do here at the very beginning. I'm like, no, don't worry. We'll get somebody that will be the techie that'll organize the whole Zoom thing. There'll be someone who knows how to do that.
I was born in the Zoom world, basically.
Right.
Coming out of school right when the pandemic hit, it was the perfect time to just learn everything.
Yeah. This is great. Like even those questions, just like I've already identified like 2 big roadblocks, that we got to figure out here on the COVID-19 and on the truck stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm pretty sure. Dude, this is the thing about it when you read it, and I know people might be on. Are we recording?
Yes.
We can stop recording.
I
Sorry.
was recording, yeah.